housing debt and lower standards of living, stagnant to falling incomes, and then NAFTA and the huge influx of Latin Americans into the country, and I'm sure this has been going on since the beginning of civilization, 8,000 years ago, with migrations of people and everything else. I mean, it's just civilization, isn't it?
Yeah. It's also, the thing is, we have just fought so hard. The labor unions have fought so hard to achieve a minimum wage level in this country. It's taken a long time for people, and then even our minimum wage, by American standards, is pathetic. I mean, you people wouldn't even look at it. So people they've fought so hard to at least earn some kind of a decent living, that to now allow another influx of people in so that you can have cheap labor, especially after the apartheid years, is a very, very unwise move.
Yeah.
It is going to cause very big social problems, very big political problems. So South Africa actually needs to think about that, and I think we need to have restrictions on people coming to the country.
Yeah.
At least for the next 10 years, possibly even 20 years, until the economy rights itself, until we could actually get somewhere. But anyway, let's move on from that, because we've got a lot to discuss here.
What about trade between RSA and China? What's going out and what's coming in?
I just want to deal with this first. You said BRICS in South Africa's people's consciousness.
Yeah, how
right?
do they feel about BRICS and being the littlest economy?
You know what I did? I went and I looked at the main news headlines in the South African newspapers. Okay, the main news headlines are mainly, and I'm looking specifically mainly at international news, but also South African news, is the G7 meeting.
Yeah.
And this is on the front pages of our newspapers. The G7 meeting and how Merkel and the EU are going to take a hard line with Russia.
With the Russians. The
Russians and increase the sanctions.
Unbelievable.
The one little bright light that came up was finally they're discussing currency manipulations, currency rigging by global banks.
Mm-hmm.
So that was good to see. And the other thing is Oscar Pistorius, the guy who murdered his girlfriend.
Yeah. With the double amputee.
Yes, he's being released in August. I wonder how much that costs him.
Well, yeah, but that's true all over the world. If you're rich, you don't go to jail. you don't go. You don't go to the electric chair, and if you're poor, if you're an American, if you have dark skin, you definitely go to jail. So that's just happens all over the world.
It's disgusting, He murdered his girlfriend. He's been in jail 10 months. He's going to be released in August, and honestly, but then you mustn't expect other people to abide by the law if you're going to do that. It's double standards. It really is double standards, and it's just there's going to be a hue and cry about it. So those are sort of the main stories, and then I go to BRICS. You want to know what's top story on the BRICS Post?
No.
Now, please know this doesn't feature anywhere in the South African newspapers. BRICS lawmakers meet in Moscow, discuss global politics. The first parliamentary summit of the BRICS opened in Moscow on Monday, with more than 100 lawmakers in attendance, speakers and deputies from Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Not one mention of this on any of the front pages of South
Well,
Africa's
it's amazing because here in China there were photographs and articles in Chinese and in English. That's amazing.
Okay, so BRICS in South African people's consciousness, non-existent.
Oh, that's terrible.
I know it's terrible, Jeff. Your average South African doesn't have any comprehension of what BRICS is really about. When they do read and hear about it, it's regarded as something very insignificant, and it's something Zuma's playing with. All right. The other problem is that a lot of people in South Africa don't respect Jacob Zuma at all.
Yeah, well, look at the Western leaders.
No, because
the only two popular leaders in the world right now are Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin.
Yeah. Well, maybe if we had a president who the country respected, they might take more notice of what's going on with BRICS. But, Zuma's going to come and go. BRICS is going to be there for a long time. But, so, the newspapers, the media actually doesn't inform the South African public of what's really going on with BRICS.
That surprises me. That really surprises me because in terms of potential employment, in terms of potential, jobs, in terms of potential trade, it's one of South Africa's biggest hopes. I
know. But to try and tell people this, it's impossible because it's communists. It's a communist. And we're going to get invaded. We're going to get invaded by these Chinese, Jeff. They're all going to come here and open up these little shops.
Oh, no. Well.
So that is the perception. That is your average South African's perception of China and I'm talking about your average South African's perception.
And, of course, I'm sure they probably consider the Russians to be communists, too, because of the former Soviet Union.
Oh, Russia is the devil. They're those communists. They're terrible. So it's a very what would you call it?
70s.
70s mentality, a 1970s perception of Russia and China, of both countries. The perception hasn't changed.
Well, what this is telling me, Gail, is that the mainstream media is the same homogenized propaganda, whether it's South Africa, France, or the United States. It's the same people who. How much of the South African media does Rupert Murdoch own?
Well, I'll get to that. I'll get to something very interesting about the South African media just now. The only way I can explain it, the only conclusion that I can come to, is South Africa is literally sitting with one foot in the west and one foot in the east.
Yeah.
Okay? We are walking a tightrope here. We are in a very tenuous position. So a lot of the international news reporting, basically, when you read it, you can see it's just basically copy and paste from Reuters.
Yeah, yeah.
There's no individual journalism there at all. And South Africa is walking a very, very fine line between East and West here. And we really don't want to end up like Libya.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, or the Americans and the Saudis, financing Boko Haram and to besiege Nigeria. Gail, are you there? Gail, I lost you. We have a bad connection. Hang on. Let's see if it's.
Hello.
Can you hear me, Gail?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, we're back. Go ahead. Yeah, we had a bad connection there for about 10 seconds. Yeah, I said or end up like Nigeria, where the Americans and the Saudis are paying for and financing Boko Haram to create bloody terror in Nigeria. That's the last thing. And the West would do it to South Africa if they felt it was in their strategic interests.
Well, this is where I say we're walking a very a tenuous position, a tightrope here, and I'll give you 2 reasons on this particular subject, is do you know that the old South African military that fought in Angola, white guys, went up to Nigeria and sorted out Boko Haram for the Nigerians? Did you know that?
The former South African army went up to Nigeria and did what?
They went and fought against Boko Haram and went and supported Nigerians.
Okay, no, I didn't know that.
Oh, the old guys that used to fight in the South African Defence Force up in Angola.
So they were mercenaries. They were mercenaries in Nigeria.
Well, they weren't mercenaries. They were actually employed by the Nigerian
government. Okay.
They don't have government oversight, Nigerian government oversight, and they went up to Nigeria and they helped train the Nigerians, and they went and helped them go and fight against Boko Haram.
Well, Boko Haram, like ISIS in Syria and Iraq, is another American creation. The Americans want to to balkanize Nigeria and cut it into three smaller countries so they can control the oil, just like they did in southern Sudan. They hived off southern Sudan so they could control the oil better. Ironically, the Chinese are actually controlling it in South Sudan, but that's exactly what's happening. Boko Haram is an American creation just as much as ISIS and Al Qaeda are.
Well, you see, now I'm sure we haven't endeared ourselves our South African guys going up there and sorting out Boko Haram for them. That's one thing. And then the other thing is South Africa is very supportive of the Palestinians.
Good for them.
No, which brings me to FIFA.
Yeah,
we all know FIFA's corrupt.
Yeah, the FIFA scandal.
Okay, FIFA's been corrupt for years. And all of a sudden now they've got to bring up FIFA and corruption just when FIFA was going to vote Israel
to remove Israel from FIFA. Yeah.
And of course the runoff on that now is, of course, they're trying to accuse Thabo Mbeki and the South African people of bribery being involved in FIFA. But I think the real reason is because South Africa is very
supportive of
Palestinians, and you probably find that the South Africans in FIFA were pro-voting Israel out. So, that's 2 fairly big things we've got ourselves involved in the last 6 months.
Wow. Well, the United States and Israel are like, evil twins. I mean, they're just empires, that are just rotten to the core and, have killed millions of people, and, it's just awful.
So now if on top of that now, our president is sitting in Moscow with Putin, while the EU, the G7 are having this meeting on how to punish Russia for being a bad and South Africa
for standing up to the United States.
And South Africa's president is sitting in Moscow with Putin at the same time. So, Jeff, I'm very concerned. I'm very concerned about my country. When I see what has been done to Libya, when I see what has been done to Syria, when I see what has been done to Ukraine.
Well, in Nigeria and Africa. I mean, Boko Haram has been used to terrorize and destabilize the largest the largest country in terms of population, the largest country in Africa.
And Nigeria is very rich in resources.
Yeah,
very rich. Well, you see, I am expecting possibly more riots in South Africa. I'm expecting more strikes. I'm expecting more xenophobic moments, and it wouldn't surprise me who is behind it. Quite frankly,
it sounds like the CIA and the MI6 have a full agenda in the Republic of South Africa.
Well, the next time anything breaks out here, I'm very, very concerned. Let me just put it that way. So that is basically, where we are. But let's get on to the more positive side of this.
No, but this is all very interesting. It's pertinent. It's germane, and this is what our listeners need to understand. Is this is what empire is doing? The American empire working with Israel, in the Middle East, and in Africa, and in Asia, and in South America, and Venezuela, and Ecuador, and Bolivia, and it's just this is what empire does, is they destabilize countries that they cannot control. They destabilize countries where they cannot control their resources. And it sounds like, the Republic of South Africa may be on their short list for the next color revolution.
It wouldn't surprise me in the least. And the problem is that in South Africa we have extremists on both sides, all right? On the far right, white side, we have extremists. And on the far left, black side, we have extremists. And these lunatics, on both extreme sides, just need the least excuse, to have a go at each other, and they will.
Yeah.
And the rest of us in the middle, we just want to get on with running this country and making it work.
Well, and the CIA and the MI6, they've got billions of dollars to, in black budget money to pay both sides, and they'll actually organize both sides against each other. That's what they do.
Well, what alerted me to this was I read an article by Gordon Duff on Veterans Today. This is in 2012. He wrote this article. It was shortly before it was when Romney was running for president. Was that 2000? Am I correct about that?
Yeah, 2012, yeah.
Right. I'm just going to read you an extract from this. The whole article is mainly about Mitt Romney. All right. But he did include a South African section in it. And this is when my ears really pricked up, and I thought, wait a minute. And this is where I really started paying attention to what was going on in the world. If you'll just give me 2 minutes to... Here we go. Right. He's talking about Bain and the African terror. And to cut a long story short, between Sheldon Adelson and Mitt Romney, they're doing deals with terrorists. UNITA, by the way, Boko Haram, by the way.
Of course.
Well, with blood diamonds. In exchange for blood diamonds, they will supply these guys with military weapons.
Of course.
And they intend to run terrorist groups out of the DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo.
The former Zaire. Kenya. The former Zaire, Kenya. For those people. Yeah, Kenya.
Oh, and listen to this little bit. Oh, they're going to buy up South Africa and take over the rest of Southern Africa. Mr. Romney and Sheldon Adelson. And people are worried about the Russians.
For the people out there that don't know, Sheldon Adelson is a multi-billionaire in the United States who finances right-wing candidates.
Yeah, well, when I read that, honestly, I was in total shock. I think that was a real wake-up call for me. And then I had a look and I really studied what was going on in Libya. I've really followed what was going on in Syria. Last year I followed everything that went on in eastern Ukraine. So I have a fairly good understanding of how these color revolutions work.
Oh yeah, they're all Western perpetrated by the United States with European complicity.
Yeah, how they fund both sides, how they get both sides killing each other, how they make
the snipers in Maidan Square who were firing on both sides, killing people on both sides to create to create chaos and confusion.
Mm-hmm. So that's where my concern lies. So now we look at China. Okay, we have bilateral trade that exceeds 270 billion so far.
Wow.
Okay, so far. As it started out, and we're not just talking about South Africa, we're talking about Africa as well. The Chinese were actually doing very much the same as what the IMF were doing, and the Europeans and the Americans in the beginning. They were coming into Africa, they were starting mines, buying mines to take the resources, and in exchange, oh, well, we'll build you a school, or we'll build you a hospital, or we'll build you a bridge, or whatever. But the thing is, it's all very well building a big hospital, but if you don't have the money to fund the hospital, staff the hospital, you know, equip the hospital, keep the hospital going, the hospital's useless. So what happens is eventually people come and they take the doors, they take the windows, they take the furniture, and eventually it's just a shell. So it's all very well building a hospital, building a school, building a bridge, building a road. But unless you are creating jobs, you know, unless it's it creates a cyclical pattern that's always mutually beneficial, then all that happens is that you're losing your resources. Which when China, I think, first started investing in South Africa, basically that's what was happening, because we were selling all our resources to China, all our iron, our steel, our platinum, our coal, etc., etc., etc.
How about gold?
Gold will get there. And in exchange, we were getting mainly textiles, which destroyed our textile industry.
Yeah, well, just like the United States.
Exactly like the United States. You know, cheap ceramics and everything. And what made it worse was Walmart has bought out a lot of our retail here. And of course, Walmart stocks Chinese products.
Yeah.
So, you know, next thing we end up with all of this. And of course, China was also paying us in US Treasury bonds, which nobody wants because, as you know, US Treasury bonds are worthless.
Worthless, yeah.
Okay, but now what I've picked up, and I really did go and have a look to see what's going on here, things seem to have changed somewhat. The deals have changed. The deals have changed in the way that instead of you just buying our steel and giving us cheap clothes or US Treasury bonds, we rather want you to come here and open up a factory and build cars and trucks and taxis. So you will be buying our steels, you will be building cars and trucks, but you will also be creating employment in the country. But also what that means is we have very strict black economic empowerment laws in this country, which is also a two-edged sword, because with black economic empowerment, you have to, your employees have to represent the demographics of the country. So, for example, if a Chinese businessman came here and opened up a factory building cars, he couldn't just bring over a whole lot of Chinese from mainland China to work in a factory, because he has to employ 75% black people.
Okay.
So, you know, so that can't happen with the BEE laws. And then also you have to have a South African business partner in your company.
Okay.
If you open. So now this looks to me, what is happening is that China is going to invest in the country. There's another example here is, I can't pronounce this, for goodness sake. You most probably can. Okay, it's a Chinese investment company called Perfect. Do you know Perfect? They make health foods and personal care products.
No, but I'm sure it's a. No, I don't. It doesn't ring a bell, but there's thousands of them.
Well, this is a perfect example. Excuse the pun. They have bought into a wine estate. because China was, buying a lot of South African wine. So now instead, they've bought into a wine estate. They're going to expand the wine estate. They will still be sending wine to China, but they'll be creating more employment in South Africa and developing the wine estate.
Well, that's encouraging. That's encouraging.
So, this is better than just buying all our resources and giving us cheap clothing in exchange. Now, actually investing, building factories, creating jobs, creating employment, which brings me to the ports. China is investing a lot of money in the South African ports. And for good reason, because we're the halfway point between Asia and South America.
Yeah, exactly.
So if we're looking at the southern half of the world here, southern hemisphere, you're looking at trade all through Africa, and you need decent ports to export. So they are, investing a lot of money in South African ports, which also means if China is going to open up factories here and help with the employment, they will be able to export their goods from our ports. Our ports at the moment are okay, Jeff. There's nothing wrong with our ports, okay? We've got pretty good ports, Durban, Richards Bay, Cape Town. But they're looking at doing major upgrades, for
increase efficiencies and speed and
traffic and all the rest of it. And then the other thing is that China wants to invest in our coastal region, which is a bit of a worry, right? Because, and I'll tell you why South Africans will immediately be up in arms about it, is because when Mozambique was run by a communist government, a lot of Asian countries, China included, came and they literally raped Mozambique's coastal area. Mozambique used to be known for prawns, incredible fishing area along the Mozambique coast. They came there and they raped it so badly that it's going to take at least another 10, 20 years before Mozambique actually regains the fishing industry that they had in the 60s and the early 70s. So, when China says, no, they're going to help South Africa invest in our coastal area.
They're thinking of the Chinese.
The first thing one thinks is, keep your damn fishing boats out of our waters. We don't want you stealing all our fish. So we'll see how that one works out. All right? So I can just imagine the reaction. Now, the other thing that China's going to do, which I personally think is a very good idea, is they're going to build a major city in Johannesburg. You know how China builds all these cities?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay. And it's actually perfect because, and I know the area very well, it used to be a gasworks. You've got this massive piece of ground close to Oliver Tambo Airport, the Johannesburg International Airport. It's like 5 minutes away. But it's totally undeveloped because it belonged to a gasworks.
It belonged to whom?
A gasworks. They make gas.
Oh, okay.
Yes. But it's a massive piece of property. I think they did give the size of the city.
I'm sure it'll be in the tens of thousands.
No, but it's a massive area. It really is a massive area. And they're going to build this city there, which I think is perfect, because around this area, it's going to be the only open piece of ground in Johannesburg. And it really is a very large area. Around the area, you have got industrial area in Kempton Park and Germiston. And you've also got a major residential area around this particular piece of land. And it's 5 minutes away from the international airport. So it's actually a perfect location. And Johannesburg is bursting at the seams at the moment. So they're going to build this massive big city. They reckon it'll take about 15 years before it's totally completed. Jobs for 100,000 people.
Oh, that's great.
A hub for Chinese investment. But here's the catch.
What's the catch?
The catch is that, you see, now this is where we're waking up. They have to provide housing for it. 70% of the housing that they're providing must be for black middle class families.
Yeah, low income.
Yeah, so they can build this city, but again, Jeff, they cannot now suddenly bring a whole lot of Chinese from China to come and live in the city. The city, it will apply the same as the BEE rules, all right? You're welcome to build a city and you're welcome to invest in the city. But it must be according to black economic empowerment laws.
Well, but you know, Gail, the Chinese are very good at this in China. I mean, my wife and my daughter and I, we live in a Chinese neighborhood in a very modest apartment, 75 square meters in the Beijing suburbs. I mean, this is something and down the street there are literally, $8 million